Greetings. Today we are revealing a startling story of violence and jealousy. After learning that a teenager was expecting her husband's child, a jealous sheriff's wife takes matters into her own hands and kills her by viciously beating her to death. Come along as we examine the lethal effects of anger and betrayal while delving into the horrific specifics of this unfortunate case. Emily Grace Carter was a kind-hearted 18-year-old with lofty aspirations. She was a recent high school graduate from Rayford, North Carolina, a small town noted for her vivacious personality and gentle disposition. In an attempt to save money for a move to Raleigh, Emily had been working as a shelf stocker at the neighborhood Dollar Tree during the summer. After her single mother passed away from cancer, she was motivated to pursue a career in healthcare and change people's lives by enrolling in nursing school. Those who knew her respected her tenacity and ambition. Emily was young, but she was wise beyond her years, and she frequently looked after Jenny and Noah, her younger siblings. She guarded them, and frequently took them out for a treat at the neighborhood Dairy Queen or offered assistance with schoolwork. When Emily met Sheriff Tom Mitchell, a well-respected Rayford law enforcement official, her life took an unexpected turn. They initially met at a neighborhood gathering where Tom, who was well known for his charm and amiability, struck up a conversation with Emily. What began as cordial conversation swiftly became. Married and 45, Tom had a knack of making Emily feel unique and recognized that no one else could. Tom's attention was novel and intriguing to a young woman who felt constrained by small-town life. With covert sex and stolen kisses, their romance developed in secret. These times with Tom were like windows into another universe for Emily, one she feared and yearned for. The sheriff's attention and the excitement of the situation made it difficult for her to resist, even though she knew the affair was dangerous. Emily found out she was pregnant in the first part of July 2017. She was both excited and afraid when she heard the news. She told only her closest friends about her secret, saying that although she wasn't sure what to do, she thought Tom should know. Emily felt conflicted. In a village where everyone knew one another, she was concerned about Tom's response, his family, and the scandal that would get out. However, she was also beginning to believe that this baby was the key to her future, and that maybe Tom would be willing to play a role. Emily told friends in the final days of her life that she intended to face Tom about the pregnancy. She wished that he would believe in her and see them going forward together in some way. But she was anxious since she felt that his reaction would have a significant impact on her life. For Emily, this was a period of deep uncertainty, marked by both hopeful dreams and intense fears. The young lady who had previously only dreamed of Raleigh and a profession as a nurse now saw her life taking an unexpected turn that would ultimately lead to her tragic demise. Emily's 15-year-old sister, Jenny Carter, found Emily's body in the woods outside their Rayford home on July 17, 2017, at approximately 7:30 a.m. As kids, Emily and her siblings used to frequently play in the forested area near the family's modest home. Jenny had gone outside that morning to find Emily, who hadn't returned home the night before. Her curiosity and terror were initially piqued when she saw broken branches and disturbed earth leading into the trees. Jenny discovered her sister dead and injured on the ground as she ventured deeper into the forest. Emily's flesh was slashed and bruised, and she was nude. Before she could fully comprehend what had happened, Jenny froze in shock, taking in the horrific scene. She remained in silence for a few minutes before running back to the home and dialing 911 with trembling hands. She could hardly describe what she had witnessed, and her voice wavered as she spoke to the operator. A neighbor had hurried over after hearing the disturbance and had wrapped Jenny in a blanket as she sat on the porch steps, pale and clearly disturbed, when paramedics and police arrived. The scenario swiftly descended into chaos, with first responders rushing to secure the area, while other family members stood by in shock. The neighbors began to assemble, chatting about the sad news, and some of them remarked that they had just seen Emily a day or two earlier. They were laughing and cheerful. When Emily's body was formally identified on the spot, Rayford was overcome with sadness and anxiety. Jenny and her family were left in shock as her body was removed for an autopsy, finding it difficult to understand the cruelty of what had just occurred to their sister and daughter. As word got out that several well-known persons would be involved in the investigation, Emily's terrible demise quickly became the talk of the town. As the community grieved the loss of the young woman with a promising future, local news outlets, such as the Fayetteville Observer, reported the incident. On July 17, 2017, soon after 8 a.m., police swiftly arrived on the scene. Detective Laura Adams, a seasoned investigator with a calm, methodical approach, led Rayford Police Department officers in securing the scene of Emily's body. It was a very eerie scene. Emily's body, which was covered in cuts, bruises, and evidence of a severe beating, was found in a tiny clearing in the woods behind her family's home. Dirt and leaves were strewn all over her, as though someone had struggled to remove her clothes. Nearby rocks and tree roots were covered in blood, illuminating the brutality she had experienced. When the investigators cleared the area, they discovered evidence that suggested a larger story. A charred spoon and a discarded syringe were nestled between some nearby rocks. Adams, Ivan's detective, identified it as drug paraphernalia. The evidence made it unclear what Emily might have been involved in or who else might have been present that evening, even though she was not known to use narcotics. The medical examiner who examined Emily's body at the scene discovered a little enlargement in her abdomen. She was in the early stages of pregnancy, according to the results of a rapid examination that was prompted by this. The investigators were taken aback by the revelation, which gave the case a surprising new dimension. Emily's recent behavioral changes had already been the subject of rumors, and now detectives had to wonder if her pregnancy was a contributing factor. When the paternity test later revealed that Sheriff Tom Mitchell was the father, the police were taken aback. Knowing that this case would require careful treatment due to the delicate details, Detective Adams and her youthful partner, Officer Mark Jensen, who was known for his strong intuition and odd sexual tendencies, took note of every piece of evidence. With Emily's covert pregnancy with the town sheriff now involved, Detective Adams was concerned about what this crime may uncover in a small town like Rayford as they investigated the scene. In an effort to follow every lead, the police confiscated the drug paraphernalia and took blood samples as proof. The community was keeping a tight eye on the investigators, so they knew they needed answers quickly. Police focused on Sheriff Tom Mitchell during their inquiry, a well-known individual in Rayford who has a long history of being regarded as a community leader. Having served for more than 10 years, Sheriff Mitchell, 45, was well-liked by many for his laid-back demeanor and sharp sense of humor. However, Mitchell displayed signals of uneasiness when asked about Emily Grace Carter, exposing a more nuanced aspect of his personality. Sheriff Mitchell reluctantly acknowledged under interrogation that he had started having sex with Emily a few months prior. He claims that he met Emily when he stopped by the Dollar Tree, where she worked, while on one of his patrol rounds. After assisting her with minor favors, like giving her transportation or giving professional advice, he first admitted to police that he had been seduced by her attractive figure. However, as the interrogation went on, Mitchell acknowledged that their relationship had become romantic and ultimately physical, characterizing it as a regrettable error in judgment. Mitchell also acknowledged that Emily had told him she was pregnant just days before she passed away. Although he didn't appear overjoyed about the pregnancy, he told police he was willing to provide for her financially and said the news had caught him off guard. But as investigators looked further, they discovered disturbing details about Mitchell's past that pointed to a pattern. Police discovered a string of covert payments made to multiple women over the years while looking through Mitchell's documents. He had made covert payments to at least 5 women using police cash, all of whom had allegedly engaged in sexual activity with him and gotten pregnant as a result. Labeled as miscellaneous expenses, these payments were never associated with individual accounts and only seldom showed up in police budgets. The transactions gave the investigators cause for concern, and they soon realized that Mitchell had been concealing these connections in order to preserve his reputation. Mitchell had a habit of luring young women who were fragile or in need of direction, like Emily, and then paying them off to keep the affairs private. Investigators were taken aback by his statement, which increased their suspicions that Mitchell may have been more complicit in Emily's death than he initially admitted. Detective Laura Adams and her staff increased their pressure on Mitchell because of his evasive answers and nonchalant attitude toward these revelations, believing that he would have stood to lose more if Emily's pregnancy were made public. Investigators started to question whether Mitchell's actions went beyond covert relationships and payments, questioning whether his need to safeguard his career and maybe his marriage was great enough to drive him to take such extreme lengths. The sheriff's previously admired reputation was severely damaged by this new revelation, which made it very evident that he was more than just a law enforcement official, but possibly a suspect with a reason to look into more. The sheriff's wife, Karen Mitchell, a prominent member of the Rayford social scene, was promptly summoned for interrogation. Karen, 42, a housewife with a reputation for being frank and demanding, has long been involved in her husband's life and work. However, as investigators dug deeper into her past, they noticed a different side of Karen, one that was molded by distrust, animosity, and bitterness over the status of her marriage. Karen didn't mince words in her interview. She informed authorities that she had suspected her husband of infidelity for years, citing odd stains on their bed linens and rumors from the locals that she had decided to disregard. Karen described how she would frequently ignore these misgivings by telling herself that Tom was committed to her and their family and concentrating on, quote, my responsibilities as a Christian wife. But she secretly doubted it, particularly after Tom's actions changed so drastically in the last 6 months. She grew secretive about his phone after noticing that he often arrived at work late without warning. Karen wanted to accept his justifications, but she began to suspect that something was seriously up. When Karen had what she called an accident, it was the tipping point. Discovered an unsettling film on Tom's laptop. She claimed to have opened his laptop to shut it down while cleaning his home office. However, she discovered a sex tape of Tom with a considerably younger woman, whom she immediately identified as Emily Grace Carter, instead of the typical files. After just a few seconds of watching, she recognized what it was. Late at night, the two are having sex in the local Dollar Tree's aisles. Karen said she couldn't believe what she'd seen and felt ill and devastated. Karen stated that she had intended to approach Tom regarding the tape, but she discovered something much more startling before she could do so. Emily was expecting a child. Karen was casually informed by one of her friends that she had spotted Emily buying pregnancy vitamins at a nearby pharmacy. Karen quickly saw the connection and realized that Tom was probably responsible for the pregnancy. She felt deceived and humiliated by the revelation, which she was unable to conceal. Police eventually found evidence that contradicted Karen's claim that she never directly confronted Emily about the pregnancy. Days before she passed away, Karen set up a meeting with Emily in the neighborhood pool, according to messages discovered on her phone by investigators. Later, witnesses attested to seeing the two together and described the interaction as hot and heated. Karen allegedly demanded to know Emily's plans with Tom, swung a pair of garden scissors at her, and called Emily a bleeping bleep who had only sought bleep. Karen's claims to the police were challenged by this direct interaction, which implied that she was prepared to do more than simply confront Emily in private. Karen said that she had been angry when detectives pressed her. She talked about how humiliated she felt, as if her life had fallen apart in front of her. She claimed that her feelings were conflicted, combining concern of the effect this would have on their family's reputation in the neighborhood, with anger at Tom for treating her disrespectfully. According to Karen's comments, she was a tense lady who had put up with years of allegations of infidelity, but could not stand the fact that Emily was pregnant. Police had major concerns about Karen's involvement in the case when they left the interrogation. She was a prime suspect in what was rapidly turning into one of Rayford's most startling investigations because of the way she acted and felt in the days before Emily's death, which revealed a clear purpose. Police discovered a fact that changed the course of their investigation as they were clearing the site of Emily Grace Carter's murder. Near Emily's body, they uncovered drug paraphernalia, including used syringes and a small bag of white substance. Among the strewn-about rubbish, detectives were able to trace the goods back to Jenny Carter, Emily's quiet and reticent 15-year-old sister. Given Jenny's drug use, investigators took a new approach, thinking about how her addiction might be related to Emily's death. They conjectured a number of scenarios, all of which were equally concerning. One assumption was that the sisters had gotten into a fight because of Jenny's drug use. Investigators pondered if Jenny might have been angry at Emily's involvement, and if this family conflict had somehow turned into a deadly fight. As authorities became more aware of Jenny's drug-related problems, which were more serious than even her closest relatives realized, This theory gained support. The idea that Jenny might have owed money to her heroin suppliers was another option that investigators looked into. Although it would have put a strain on Emily's meager resources, Emily, who only worked part-time at Dollar Tree, might have offered financial support to pay Jenny's obligations. Investigators believe that if Emily had ventured into hazardous region, the debts or pressure from dealers might have resulted in her death on her sister's behalf. Additionally, police wondered if Jenny's addiction might have unintentionally brought a hazardous group into their life. Perhaps Emily was at risk because of Jenny's drug problems and her knowledge of her sister's involvement with these people. As they investigate Jenny's recent actions further, they discovered texts on her phone that showed she was communicating with a few local drug dealers and users. As she spiraled farther into a dangerous realm, the text depicted a young girl in over her head, trying to conceal her addiction from her family. Unsettling concerns regarding the family's hidden dynamics and their potential role in Emily's death were brought up by the revelation of Jenny's drug use. Several ideas now confronted the police, all of which suggested that Jenny's drug use may have been a contributing factor in the terrible circumstances that resulted in her sister's murder. Before making any final judgments, investigators needed to learn more about Jenny's covert existence and the ties inside the Carter family. Jenny Carter eventually opened up to investigators in a tense interview room, sharing startling information about her hardships and relationships with Sheriff Tom Mitchell. Jenny acknowledged having a covert drug addiction that began soon after her mother passed away from cancer. Jenny claimed that at the age of 15, she felt lost and alone and turned to drugs to dull the intense anguish. Although her addiction rapidly worsened, she was able to conceal it from the majority of her acquaintances until Sheriff Tom Mitchell discovered it. Jenny disclosed that earlier that year, she had been detained by Sheriff Mitchell when he caught her using drugs. He started pressuring her, suggesting that she could get out of the arrest by having sex with him, rather than guiding her through the customary legal procedure. Jenny had felt confined at that moment. She felt helpless against someone as well-respected and powerful as the sheriff, and she was afraid that her addiction would become public knowledge. Emily, however, had taken over. Jenny informed police that Emily had been appalled and protective when she found out about her situation. After their mother died, Emily, who had always assumed a maternal role, went up to Sheriff Mitchell and begged him to leave Jenny alone. Jenny claims that Emily even extended an offer. If Sheriff Mitchell agreed to protect Jenny, she would have sex with him personally. Emily's relationship with the sheriff began with this sacrifice. It was a sinister arrangement that Emily concealed from her friends and other people. Jenny shocked detectives with her confession. She explained how she felt helpless and awful about the whole thing. At first, she had been relieved when Emily stepped in, thinking that her problems would be resolved. However, Jenny eventually came to understand the price of her sister's assistance. She saw Emily becoming more and more aloof and reclusive. Anxiety and concealment had begun to supplant Emily's once bright demeanor, and Jenny couldn't get rid of the sense that her sister was taking on her burden. As she spoke, police observed Jenny's distress, providing a devastating account of the emotional toll the incident had placed on her. Investigators realized they needed to learn more about Sheriff Mitchell's past and the dynamics between the sisters as they concluded the interview. Jenny's moving testimony brought to light the terrible effects of their situation by exposing a convoluted network of relationships tainted by fear, heartbreak, and deceit. One name often surfaced as investigators pieced together Emily's last days: the wife of the sheriff, Karen Mitchell. Emily died as a result of a tragic series of events, according to the evidence. Their results showed that following learning of Emily's pregnancy, Karen had become more agitated and envious. Emily wasn't simply another one of her husband's flings, in her opinion. As a young woman bearing her husband's child, she posed a threat and might hold the secret to a scandal that would upend Karen's meticulously constructed world. Karen had waited until she was certain Emily would be home by herself the night of the murder. Investigators think she addressed the teen outside her home, in the little wooded area close by where they wouldn't be visible. Karen initially made an effort to remain composed, insisting that Emily terminate her pregnancy and vanish. However, a furious dispute erupted as Emily refused. Something inside Karen exploded when she realized Emily was not fazed by her threats. Motivated by a combination of rage, terror, and treachery, she snatched up a hefty wooden club, a tool she always carried with her. and started hitting Emily. Karen barely saw the bruises and blood she left on Emily's body in her rage. All of the feelings she had suppressed now erupted into violence as she continued to strike. The entire reality struck her when she eventually came to a stop and spotted Emily's dead body. She had overreached herself. Karen attempted to tidy up after the murder, concealing the club and leaving for home in the hopes of continuing her life as if nothing had happened. Since she was the sheriff's wife, she thought no one would ever suspect her, but investigators discovered evidence that connected her to the crime. After examining the club, investigators found evidence of Karen's fingerprints. Additionally, they found fabric threads on Emily's body that corresponded to items Karen was known to frequently wear. Karen Mitchell was arrested by police on the morning of July 27, 2017. Early in the morning, as the light was just beginning to rise, detectives knocked on her door. At first, thinking it was just another ordinary visit, she responded calmly. Her attitude, however, altered after they told her of the murder charge. Karen's face became white, and she made an effort to hide her involvement by saying she had spent the entire night at home. But she lost her cool under pressure. When she was released in handcuffs, she avoided the looks of the neighbors who had gathered outside by looking down. The Carter family was relieved and saddened by the news of Karen's arrest. They had some answers at last, but they would never be able to get Emily back. The neighborhood was in shock as a result of Karen's acts, which had destroyed her own life and her family's reputation. Karen Mitchell's trial started in May 2018, attracting local media attention and a crowded courtroom. Under the direction of lawyer Wallace Kays, her defense team used a novel strategy, a defense of a deceived woman. Karen stated that her husband's years of adultery had pushed her to the brink, especially his connection to Emily. Karen's attorneys contended that her behavior was the consequence of intense mental distress. The shock of finding out about Emily's pregnancy and the treachery by Sheriff Tom Mitchell made matters worse. They portrayed Karen as a woman who was experiencing mental distress, claiming that she acted out of overwhelming rage and had no intention of killing Emily. District Attorney Linda Chavez led the prosecution's forceful rebuttal to this claim. Chavez produced evidence, such as the clubs Karen had brought to the altercation, showing her deliberate behavior that evening. Karen planned the attack, according to Chavez, with the intention of killing Emily since she posed a threat to her marriage and her social status. Karen's motivation, according to Chavez, was to preserve her reputation and keep any scandal from reaching her family, not to indulge in momentary insanity. Chavez contended before the jury that Emily was a victim who was innocent and had been singled out for punishment because of her relationship with Tom. When Emily's friends spoke about their loss and the effects of Emily's passing, the emotional weight of the trial was very evident. In contrast to the horrible end she faced, Emily's compassionate disposition was also attested to by her friends and neighbors. Though she occasionally broke down in tears when her attorney brought up her husband's treachery, Karen's face remained a mix of defiance and shame throughout the trial. Karen Mitchell was convicted guilty of second-degree murder by the jury following 2 weeks of deliberations and compelling closing arguments. She felt as though the verdict struck her with a chilly finality. She was imprisoned for 25 years, without the chance of parole. Karen's poise wavered as the punishment was read. She was clearly taking in the truth of her destiny and looked terrified. Justice was expressed by Emily's family in a bittersweet way. There was some closure after Karen was sentenced. The response from the community was not uniform. While some saw the punishment as a form of justice, others empathized with Karen's portrayal as a woman driven to the brink. In sharp contrast to the life of social respect she had previously had, Karen's narrative would finish in prison. All of the participants' lives were permanently scarred by the trial's aftermath. Karen Mitchell received a 25-year prison sentence for killing Emily Grace in the second degree. After she was admitted to the Ohio Correctional Institution for Women, she had to deal with the consequences of her behavior on a daily basis. Over the years, she would frequently reflect about her life prior to the murder, which was full of social events and family get-togethers. But as part of her rehabilitation, her life now revolved on counseling sessions and jail routines. Sheriff Tom Mitchell, however, had to deal with a different sort of reckoning. Authorities began looking into his misappropriation of public monies after the trial. He was found to have been paying other women in secret, including Emily, to cover up his extramarital affairs. Tom was accused with several counts of misuse of funds and misconduct in office in May 2018, a few weeks after Karen was sentenced. He received a 5-year prison sentence after being proven guilty. Many inhabitants of Winchester, a tiny town, were startled and dismayed by the incident. The trust they had once placed in Tom as a leader was destroyed by his actions. Jenny's narrative, however, took a different course. In order to address her substance misuse issues, she enrolled in a recovery facility following her traumatic experience and the death of her sister. Emily put a lot of effort into rebuilding her life with the help of a committed recovery community and counselors. She not only completed her rehabilitation program by 2019, but she also earned a social work degree from college. Using her experiences to encourage and assist those in need, Jenny wished to assist others who encountered same difficulties. Ultimately, a web of pain was left behind as the lives of Karen, Tom, and Emily tragically collided. Tom's decline from grace left him isolated and ashamed, while Karen's incarceration made her face the repercussions of her behavior. Jenny, however, was able to survive the ordeal. She dedicated her life to assisting others in finding their way to recovery after learning to deal with her own grief and loss. Their experiences served as a warning to the community, reminding everyone of the devastating effects of betrayal and violence. Remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the following story.